Hi students, this is Professor Barry Brennan. It's still me. I know I look a little bit different from the last video. I change, but hopefully I'm changing for the better. I don't know, I'll leave that up to you to decide. We are going to continue on our discussion about persuasive speaking. In the last video I talked about claims. We're going to review that, and we're going to talk about claims and how to make an argument and different types of reasoning. And then the next video, we're going to talk about fallacies, and that's how we're going to do this video. So let's get straight to the PowerPoint, and you're going to notice too that I am going to review that claim piece since I've already covered it a little quickly, and then we'll move on to reasoning pieces. Okay, so what we want is that, and here we are. So persuasive speaking involves an argument, right? It's an argument. You're arguing for something. Persuasion and argumentation are different things, but it does involve logic. It involves you figuring out, the best way to make your argument, have evidence, supporting materials. You've been learning this already in informative speaking, so this is not new for you, right? So here we are. The basic components we have. What are the basic components? Since I've already gone over this one time, what do you think? What's the first one? It's claim, right? That's your proposition. What assertion are you making? What are you asserting is going on, right? And how are you going to back that up? That's your supporting materials. That's your evidence. How you're going to substantiate, love that word. And warrant is your reasoning, the way you're going about proving that this is true. So a claim is a proposition. What are you trying to prove? Oftentimes I ask my students when they're working on persuasive speaking is, what's your end game? What do you want us to believe or think at the end, or behave, or what action do you want us to take at the end of your speech? What are you after, right? What is it you're after? Proposition of fact. 3 different kinds of propositions. We've got proposition of fact, which basically asserts the conclusion can be proven. A fact is something that can be proven. So think about in science, something becomes a fact when someone does the experiment over and over and over again, they get the same result. That's how they know it becomes a fact. If you mix these 2 chemicals together, you get this. And so scientist 1 does that, scientist number 2 does that, scientist number 3, and on. They all get the same. It becomes a fact that those 2 chemicals together make something. Okay, so a fact can be proven. Keep that in mind. Fact is something that can be tested. It's either true or false. A proposition of value, however, is not based on facts. It is much more pathos-oriented, okay? It can be ethos-oriented in terms of value and character, but it's more about how you feel about something. And we get our values from our family, from our culture, from the country that we live in and that we've grown up in, from our community, from our church, right? Or our synagogue or our mosque. So, or nature. Right? What if you're a red road practicer? We get our values from different places. And there's something that is a belief that we have. You can't prove it, but it has to do, our values also guide our behavior. It has to do with right and wrong. It has to do with what we believe. And you can argue that, but the problem with arguing a proposition of value is this. You can't prove it. Like, there's no end to it because you're always going to have someone that doesn't believe that. So trying to convince someone about that value, I think, is difficult to argue a proposition of value. All right, so let's go back. I don't mean to do that really fast. So a value claim cannot be proven because it's based upon cultural, religious, political, and or personal belief systems. It is a claim about what is right, or it is a claim about what is wrong. So if you're making a claim that something's wrong and it's not based on fact, it's really based on value, like take the abortion argument. A lot of that is based on value, on what you value. right? Let's just say if you have an absolute value about abortion is wrong no matter what, even if the mother's life is at stake. That's about your values. That really comes down to what you value more, right? So, and I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's just, these are opinions, right? It's based on opinion, attitude, ethics, beliefs, daily social and cultural practices. That's what it is. So we think it's right or wrong, but I always love to tell students when they're having an argument is everybody sits in their own right place. So in whatever you believe in, it's your right place. I had a student once that was a very devout Muslim, and I found when he would talk about like pork, he was extremely devout and talked about porks or swine in a very negative way, as dirty. And I understand that where he was coming from in his devoutness, in his belief, right, into his religion, having anything to do with that animal was like against God, right? And there's probably a lot more that I'm missing on that. But for me, I don't have those same feelings, right? But that was right for him, but isn't necessarily right for me, right? So keep that in mind when you try to argue values. Everyone's got different ones. You're not going to really come out to convince anyone differently. Okay, moving along. Proposition of policy. Now, this is what your next speech is going to be about. You are going to argue something. You're going to assert something. You're going to assert that we have to take a specific course of action. Oftentimes in debate, we have a proposition of policy. We argue policy. Your speech is going to be something to that effect because you're going to use Monroe's motivated sequence, which requires you to be specific in the course of action we are to take. So in a policy, you have to have a specific course of action. You have to tell us how we're going to get that policy enacted. What do we need to do? It always has a plan. So it's sequential. It has some steps to it. So these are different types of claims. Claim of policy, claim of fact, claim of value. So all claims obviously need support, what we call evidence. So the main way to support your claim is through examples. I'm going to go farther than that, more than examples. And examples that actually, let's say you're doing a claim of fact, examples of where your claim, maybe some other country has used it. And so you make this claim that if it's been used in this country, in a country maybe that has similar values to this country, like Canada, we're really similar in terms of the way we live our lives, right? So if you were to say this works in Canada, it should work in the United States, right? But you couldn't say this works in China. It may not work in the United States. Our cultures, and I'm not talking like just ethnic, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the way we do politics, right? I mean, there's a very closed culture in China in terms of the way they do things and the control there, and we're a pretty open society. So if you're going to, in order to support a claim, you got to have supports that make sense. Narratives or stories. Testimony. Testimony is, you can have expert testimony, you can have lay testimony. I've talked about this in informative speaking. Expert testimony is people who have credentials to support, like someone has a doctorate or a master's degree, or someone's a CEO of a company. Those are people that are expert testimony. They're experts in their field. People go to them to ask them, like, what is this about or what does this mean? A lay person, lay testimony, can be someone that is having an experience, has experience in that field. They may not be considered an expert, but they have experience. They've lived it. It's like a lived experience, as opposed to credentials or occupation. All right, facts, something that can be proven. So I've kind of already talked to you about that. What is a fact? You understand what that is? And statistics, obviously, statistics. But remember how to use statistics. You want to use them It's better to round off if you're going to give us a lot, because we can't conceptualize those kinds of details. So instead of saying 25,690, you could just say 25 or almost 26K, right? Almost 26K, or 25,700. That's easier to understand than understanding all those little numbers. Also, you want to use presentation aids, right? You want to use that kind of thing. Also helps us see in a different form your evidence. What's a warrant? It's a line of reasoning. It's how you connect the dots, right? How are you connecting the claim with your evidence? How are you making sense? And we mean, when we're talking about warrant also, when we're talking about reasoning, we're talking about, are we doing it inductively, which is inferring, making inferences, or we can use it through analogy, or are we doing it deductively? And I'm going to show you a basic deductive type of logic. It is a way of logic, and it's something actually that I'm going to have you do in class, where you're going to work on constructing your own syllogisms and understand that construction, because there is a logic to it. I want to go to the next slide, and then I'm going to see whether I want to stop here and then pick up in another video so we can get this all in. Okay, reasoning. So the process of drawing conclusions from evidence. Okay, think about this. How many of you watch like those, detective shows and cop shows and law shows, about trial shows? Those are the best, right? Because it's sequential, it's linear. You find the person who did it, you find the evidence, right? There's different kinds of evidence. They always say DNA evidence and putting that person in that place at the time, and they have to have motive. There's all these things associated with what is the evidence. And if they have that evidence, then you can draw the conclusion that that person did it. There's a relationship between the accusation that someone did it and the evidence, and they have to have a relationship. You have to connect them. In this case, a lot of cases, it is deductive reasoning, because it makes sense that one leads to the next, leads to the next. That's deductive. Inductive is when you're making an inference, right? Oftentimes when you want to say that someone would have a motive, that is inference, and you can't prove someone's motivation, but you can infer based upon the facts, the evidence that you have. You can infer. So let's say someone's killed, and it looks as if it's a husband, and it looks as if the wife is going to get $3 million as a result of her husband's death, and they've been having a very bad time of it. Neighbors have been hearing them arguing. There's lots of evidence to suggest that the wife poisoned the husband so she could get the money. Okay, maybe she has an oleander bush in the back. I'm just making the stuff up. But that's it. You find this evidence, and there's an inference, because the people, this is inductive reasoning, the people that are most likely, the first suspects in any case, they always look at the family or the spouses or the boyfriends or girlfriends. Okay, I'm going to stop there. We're going to pick up on the next. I'll see you in a minute. Thank you.